The EU has negotiated a deal with Pfizer and BioNTech to secure millions of doses of their experimental COVID-19 vaccine, which the companies say is 90% effective in preventing the virus. The Commission is expected to approve the agreement on Wednesday. Well, for more on this, let's cross to Brussels and our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. Well, good evening there to you, Darren. So as the EU pushes to get hold of this vaccine, I know that you've been speaking to the former Commission President, Jose Manuel Barroso, and you discussed this issue of vaccines, didn't you?
Yeah, so there's obviously an awful lot of optimism, isn't there, Isabel, here in Brussels and indeed in many European capitals, that this vaccine could turn out to be a game changer after it was announced yesterday by Pfizer, saying it was 90% effective. There is hope that this could help return much of our lives back to normal in the months to come, certainly by the spring of next year. One of the big issues, though, that will, of course, face the European Union and indeed many member states is how properly to distribute this vaccine and also to get their hands on it in the first place. And as you say, tomorrow the European Union is expected to essentially sign that contract for 300 million doses of the vaccine in the hope that it can be properly distributed across Europe in the months to come. That is, must be said, is in addition to what member states have already bought and signed up to the millions of doses that they will be getting individually as countries themselves. But there is also another question, of course, about vaccinating not just people here in Europe, but also the rest of the world, Isabel, because clearly this deadly virus is not going to go away if essentially can't provide protection for most people across the planet. And that's what I spoke to, as you say, former Commission President Barroso about. He's about to become the chairman of Gavi, which is an organisation that is all about trying to distribute vaccinations equally. And I started by asking him how pleased he was by yesterday's announcement and how significant he thought it was.
Gavi Global Alliance for Vaccines, I will have that position share of Gavi starting 1st January. So I prefer not to comment now more specifically, but certainly I can say that we have all received very positively this news. Now, as you know, we have to wait for the emergency use authorization, and we know that this vaccine and possibly other vaccines that are being developed are a very strong response to the current pandemic. And it's so critically important from a public health point of view, but also from an economic and social point of view. So basically, extremely good news, very hopeful, this news that we just received.
Just to pick up a little bit on that, you don't have to necessarily talk specifics, but a big challenge will be that this vaccine or any vaccine that comes available in the coming months is going to be hoarded by us in the European Union, by the United States, by wealthy countries, and that might be to the detriment, mightn't it, to poorer parts of the world who equally need this vaccine just as much?
No, that's exactly the mission of Gavi. By the way, Gavi has been doing it very, very successfully, and now you are working. I'm already following this work. We created the COVAX. It's a facility to ensure proper delivery all over the world. By the way, the work of this COVAX is going very well. But for instance, China is already a member of COVAX and the United States not yet. That's one of the areas where I hope Biden administration will bring the United States to be a full partner and shareholder when we try to achieve global public goods like public health. So we need everybody on board. And I think the measures are being taken so that we can ensure equitable distribution and affordable distribution of the vaccine all over the world.
But it should be said, of course, Isabel, while there is optimism, there is caution too. Of course, testing and trials of this vaccine, along with the dozens of others that are currently being trialled across the world, will have to continue. And there are questions beyond that just about how much it could prove to be effective and change our lives. But that optimism, at least, is there, that potentially there is light at the end of the tunnel.
And Darren, another piece of interesting news from your part of the world is the EU budget. And that's passed an important step today, but it's not the end of the line, is it?
It's not. And you remember back in the summer, EU leaders agreed on what this, pretty historic deal in many ways, an EU budget over a trillion, euros for the next 7 years, and also this coronavirus recovery fund that was going to use shared European debt worth 750 billion euros. Now, they're both going to kick in next year, but clearly they need to reach a deal first. So while EU leaders agreed it in the summer, they needed MEPs on board. Many MEPs were not terribly happy, essentially, with the deal had been struck for two reasons, Isabel. First one was on this issue of the rule of law. They wanted a mechanism which meant that essentially some of that money wouldn't flow to countries that were perceived by a majority of EU leaders to be breaking the law. They managed to get that passed last week. What they've done today is essentially get it one hurdle further by increasing the budget by 15 billion euros, dealing with things like the Erasmus programme and extra money for health programmes in the years to come. But as you rightly point out, it is not over the line yet because it'll still need to be ratified by the Parliament as a whole, and indeed by EU leaders as a whole. And there are suggestions that Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, may well veto it, given that compromise that seems to have been reached on the rule of law issue. But I also did have a chance to speak to former Commission President Barroso about this as well. And I suggested to him that, that deal was arranged back in the summer before this devastating second wave, devastating for human lives, but also for economies too. And may the EU actually have to go further with more money in the months to come.
The European Central Bank, if needed, will step up. I think they are going to continue their strong monetary policy in favor of supporting Europe, but also, if needed, the member states will need to increase the fiscal response to the crisis. Now, I don't think there will be in the short term any change in the package that was already agreed. It was already very ambitious. But I was referring not just to the response to this crisis, but more generally. There is work that should be completed. For instance, the banking union, in fact, it was my commission that launched the banking union as a response to the financial crisis. And two of the pillars of that banking union were already approved, but we still need one about the common deposit guarantee. The capital markets union, we need to do more. Also in terms of defense and foreign policy, something has to be done. If Europe wants to reinforce its sovereignty, that has to be done. And I think considering the last developments in the world, a much more aggressive Russia, a much more assertive China, and also a more unpredictable United States of America, Europeans are coming to the idea that they should do more if they want to defend their interests and their values, and they should do more together. That, of course, does not mean that we don't keep our, let's say, very close relationship with the United States of America. It's also critically important from a defense point of view. But I think there is space, and there are now sufficient drivers for the European Union member states to do more in terms of their common projects.
And Darren, your full interview there with José Manuel Barroso is going to be part of a global conversation interview. When can we expect that to air?
Yeah, it's going to be on air in full on Thursday evening at 10 to 9 at 8:50 CET. Tune in.
We sure will be. Thanks so much, Darren. Darren in Brussels there.